We have that was a beast of a one. It was a 20 mark answer. 20 mark answer. I always recommend you do 20. You do 3-piece paragraphs. Okay. Um, the first thing to highlight is, so the question was saying, evaluate the view that global warming is the greatest threat to coastlines and their communities. And the first thing I want to stamp out now is the misconception of the ozone layer. The ozone layer has nothing to do with climate change. Ozone layer is the hole in the ozone layer is a hole in our atmosphere, but it's caused by CFCs, which are gases that are included in things like aerosols. By breaking the ozone layer, means more sun rays come in, etc. But CO2 does not in any way, shape, or form affect the ozone layer. So does methane, etc. So when you talk about emissions of greenhouse gases like CO2, ozone, it makes you look like you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, so avoid talking about the ozone layer if you do not know and fully understand how it works. Anyway, now that's gone and done over. Paragraph number 1, okay, is it says evaluate the view of global warming. Easy, talk to me about global warming. So describe the causes of climate change. Okay, so what is climate change? What causes them? Provide an example of the impacts climate change has. Okay, global warming being one of them. Explain how they are caused by climate change. Okay, so how does climate change cause the impact you've just explained? Criticism. Okay, how these impacts. So you know eostatic is a change, the change in sea level height. Okay, so it's how can the sea level change in height in ways that aren't necessarily linked to climate change. So you could say actually it's hard to know if the sea level rising because ice is melting and there's more water, or if it's doing through or if it's doing itself through natural processes. Okay, so eostatic change. Talk to me about eostatic change. How does it work? What is it? Okay, they're very similar. Talk about thermal expansion of water. Okay, as the water warms up, it expands. Okay, and tell me, value overall, do you think climate change is important? Yes, no. Give me your opinion. Paragraph 2. That's where you have to compare eostatic to isostatic. Okay, sometimes sea levels drop not because there's less water, because the ground rises. Okay, yeah, remember it's after ice ages, there's a bounce in the level, and after the ice melts, there's less pressure, so the land can subside and come back up. Okay, provide an example of isostatic change. Okay, explain how isostatic change can change sea levels and why that is also a threat to coastlines. And explain how impacts could also be caused by tectonic change. And say, well, actually, however, isostatic change, so a change in the land level, can also be caused through tectonic change. Okay, so a tectonic earthquake might increase or decrease the height of the land in comparison to the sea. Okay, not necessarily only isostatic. Explain to me how, etc. Think of a tsunami when the plate bounces back up. In the lessons, I even showed you a picture of some World War II ships in Japan that rose back out of the sea floor when the after an earthquake as the land increased in height. Okay, so then evaluate, telling me isostatic tectonic change. How do you think they're more or less of a threat to communities and climate change? Okay, and the final one is looking at what's another final alternative. The alternative is human threats. The biggest threat to coastlines and their communities is our actions. Okay, ways in which we make the area weaker. More so, example of human threats could be something like biological weathering, erosion. Okay, what do we do? Remember in Slapton, they removed the shingle bar out offshore, which meant erosion. The waves become more destructive and they damage the coastline, and bingo, 2 villages disappear. Okay, talk me through what impacts, what are human threats? Give me an example of Hall Sands and tell me how they're linked. Okay, and then again, tell me, however, other factors that would cause a threat to the coastline is the quality of the geology of the rock. Okay, the lithology, if it's concordant and discordant coastline, that has more of an impact, arguably, to some extent, than climate change. And then evaluate how much do you agree they have more or less of an impact than climate change. Okay, so it's a huge amount of stuff you can talk about. I think a lot of you sometimes just completely forgot about the human threats, lithology, geology, isostatic change was sort of discussed, tectonic change barely anyone talked about. Just remember they're the main ways in which our coastline changes. Okay, it's kind of just try and practice those questions at home. We learned about those. We had a lesson for eostatic change and climate change. We had a lesson for isostatic change and tectonic, and we had a lesson for the geology and lithology. So it's basically, I've organized these paragraphs in 3 of the lessons we had. Okay, so next one. Not next one. Again, same mistake. Here are some AO1s the exam board is looking for. Okay, I've discussed those. You could have talked about storm surges. Actually, I didn't, but you could have mentioned that. You could have, and these are some of the AO2. Okay, so I'll flick through those. You can pause the video, read through the itty-gritty detail of the exam board.